Every public passes through several stages. The first of these is comprised in the early days of mad raging by the blind mob, tossed hither and thither, right and left. The second is demagogy, which is born anarchy, and that leads inevitably to despotism. Not any longer legal and overt, and therefore responsible despotism, but to unseen and secretly hidden, yet nevertheless sensibly felt, in the hands of some secret organization or other, whose acts are the most unscrupulous, inasmuch as it works behind a screen, behind the backs of all sorts of agents, the changing of whom not only does not injuriously affect, but actually aids the secret force by saving it, thanks to continual changes, from the necessity of expending its resources on its rewarding of long services. Who and what is in a position to overthrow an invisible force? And this is precisely what our force is. Gentile masonry blindly serves as a screen for us and our objects. But the plan of action of our force, even its very abiding place, remains for the whole people of unknown mystery. But even freedom might be harmless and have its place in the state economy without injury to the well-being of the peoples, if it rested upon the foundation of faith in God, upon the brotherhood of humanity, unconnected with the conception of equality, which is negatived by the very laws of creation, for they have established subordination. With such a faith as this, a people might be governed by a wardship of parishes, and would walk contentedly and humbly under the guiding hand of its spiritual pastor, submitting to the dispositions of God upon earth. This is the reason why it is indispensable for us to undermine all faith, to tear of minds out of the humans the very principle of Godhead and the Spirit, and to put in its place arithmetical calculations and material needs. In order to give the humans no time to think and take note, their minds must be diverted toward industry and trade. Thus all the nations will be swallowed up in the pursuit of gain, and in the race for it will not take note of their common foe. But again, in order that freedom may once for all disintegrate and ruin the communities of the humans, we must put industry on a speculative basis. The result of this will be that what is withdrawn from the land by industry will slip through the hands and pass into speculation, that is, to our classes. What form of an administrative role can be given to communities in which corruption has penetrated everywhere? Communities where riches are attained only by the clever surprise tactics of semi-swindling tricks, where looseness reigns, where morality is maintained by penal measures and harsh laws, but not by voluntarily accepted principles, where the feelings toward faith and country are obliterated by cosmopolitan convictions. What form of rule is it to be given to these communities if not that despotism which I shall describe to you? We shall create an intensified centralization of government in order to grip in our hands all the forces of the community. We shall regulate mechanically all the actions of the political life of our subjects by new laws. These laws will withdraw one by one all the indulgences and liberties which have been permitted to the humans, and our kingdom will be distinguished by the despotism of such magnificent proportions as to be at any moment and in every place in a position to wipe out any human who opposes us by deed or word. We shall be told that such a despotism as I speak of it is not consistent with the progress of these days, but I will prove to you that it is. In the times when the peoples looked upon kings on their thrones as a pure manifestation of the will of God, they submitted without a murmur to the despotic power of kings. But from the day when we insinuated into their minds the conception of their own rights, they began to regard the occupants of thrones as merely ordinary mortals. The holy unction of the Lord's anointed has fallen from the heads of kings in the eye of the people, and when we also robbed them of their faith in God, the might and power was flung upon the streets into the public proprietorship and was seized by us. Moreover, the art of deflecting masses and individuals by means of cleverly manipulating theory and verbiage, by regulations of life in common and all sorts of other quirks, in all of which human understands nothing, belongs likewise to the specialists of our administrative brain, reared on analysis, observation, on delicacies of fine calculation. In this species of skill we have no rivals, any more than we have either in the drawing up of plans of political actions and solidarity. For a time, perhaps, we might be successfully dealt with by a coalition of the humans of all the world, But from this danger we are secured by the discord existing among those whose roots are so deeply seated that they can never be plucked up. We have set one against another the personal and national reckonings of the humans, religious and race hatreds, which we have fostered into a huge growth in the course of the past 20 centuries. This is the reason why there is not one state which would anywhere receive support if it were to raise its arm, for every one of them must bear in mind that any agreement against us would be unprofitable to itself. We are too strong. There is no evading our power. The nations cannot come to even an inconsiderable private agreement without any secretly having a hand in it. For me, regis regnant, it is through me that kings reign, and it was said by the prophets that we were chosen by God himself to rule over the whole earth. God has endowed us with genius that may be equal to our task. Capital, if it is to cooperate untrammeled, must be free to establish a monopoly of industry and trade. This is already being put in execution by an unseen hand in all quarters of the world. This freedom will give political force to those engaged in industry, and that will help to oppress the people. Nowadays, it is more important to disarm the peoples than to lead them into war, but more important to use of our advantage the passions which have burst into flames than to quench their fire. More important to catch up and interpret the ideas of others to suit ourselves than to eradicate them. The principal object of our directorate consists of this: to debilitate the public mind by criticism, to lead it away from serious reflections calculated to arouse resistance, to distract the forces of the mind towards a sham fight of empty eloquence. In all ages, the people of the world, equally with individuals, have accepted words for deeds, for they are content with a show and rarely pause to note, in the public arena, whether promises are followed by performance. Therefore, we shall establish institutions which will give eloquent proof of their benefit to progress. We shall assume to ourselves the liberal physiognomy of all parties, of all directions, and we shall give that physiognomy a voice in the orators who will speak so much that they will exhaust the patience of their hearers and produce an abhorrence of oratory. In order to put public opinion into our hands, we must bring it into a state of bewilderment by giving expression from all sides to so many contradictory opinions and for such length of time as will suffice to make the humans lose their heads in the labyrinth and come to see that the best thing is to have no opinion of any kind in matters political, which is not given to the public to understand because they understand only by him who guides the public. This is the first secret. The second secret requisite is comprised of the following: to multiply to such an extent national failings, habits, passions, conditions of civil life that it will be impossible for anyone to know where he is in the resulting chaos, so that the people in consequence will fail to understand one another. This measure will also serve us in another way, namely to sow discord in all parties, to dislocate all collective forces which are still unwilling to submit to us, and to discourage any kind of personal initiative which might in any degree hinder our affair. There is nothing more dangerous than personal initiative. If it be genius behind it, such initiative can do more than can be done by millions of the people whom we have sown discord. We must so direct the education of the human communities that, whenever they come upon a matter requiring initiative, they may drop their hands in despairing impotence. The strain which results from freedom of action saps the forces which it might with the freedom of another. From this collision arises grave moral shocks, disenchantments, failures by all. By all these means, we shall so wear down the humans that they will be compelled to offer us international power of a nature that by its position will enable us without any violence gradually to absorb all the states, forces of the world, and to form a super